Advisory Edge VCast, first one of the year, 2026, and I am here with Andrew Mattner of Your Success Lab, beaming in from Adelaide, Australia. Um, Actually still on holiday, so what a legend for being here. But wanted to thank you for coming along, Andrew, and maybe just give you the chance to introduce yourself and Your Success Lab to our audience.
Thanks, Richard. Look, it's always good to catch up with people that we worked with and known for a while. So yeah, no, I am still on holidays. I'm about to sneak off to the Barossa for a few days of it's going to be 40 degrees here in Adelaide over this week, so it's not going to be too much fun. But I'm sure I'll find a nice chilled wine somewhere in a pool that I can hang out at. So it'll be good. So I'm looking forward to that. But mate, yeah, Your Success Lab, we've been in business for I think about 3 years since I left my former business. About 3 years ago. But I've been in the game for I guess nearly 30 years now. From transitioning from being a traditional accountant to more a strategic advisor now, and I think that's really where our focus is in Your Success Lab. We still do a lot of the traditional accounting and support work for clients, but our real purpose is to, I guess, support business owners on their journey to some sort of transition, whether it be from an owner operator to an owner investor where they've got a management team running their business, or to an exit point via a succession plan or a sale. And we help them build out their business models and structures and teams and data sets and all those key things that they need to be able to scale and grow effectively.
Awesome, Andrew. Can you maybe unpick a little bit? You've talked about kind of what you're doing and the fact you've transitioned from compliance and traditional accounting into advisory. Why did you make that transition?
Probably from my perspective, what lights me up really. I'm what I would say is I'm more an entrepreneurial finance guy. I like being in business and I like building things and creating things and all the strategy and the models and stuff that goes with them. So the traditional accounting stuff is critical to making that happen, but it just bored the
Mm.
life out of me. And you could go anywhere. People go, oh, you're an accountant or whatever it might be, and you know what, that's still a very important part of business. Business owners need to know their numbers, and they need good accounting advice and support to make sure that structures are right and tax is being managed and all those sort of things. But it wasn't what I love doing, I love seeing business owners grow. I mean, it's something that's a real core value for me is improvement and growth. And, I guess that's where you naturally gravitate. You gravitate to what you love.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important, and it speaks actually quite a bit to my story as well, from the shock and horror of being knee deep in tax returns to realizing that there were other things we could do. So I think that would resonate with a lot of people. One thing we try and do at Spotlight Reporting, obviously, is challenge that status quo, and it's sometimes it's pitched as being anti-compliance, but it's not at all. Compliance is actually necessary, as you said, but advisory is hopefully what gets the best thinkers in our industry leaping out of bed in the morning and wanting to change lives.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me what the impact is, not only for Your Success Lab of being more advisory first, and it's okay to talk, about money and things like
Yeah.
that, but also looking qualitatively what it means for you and your team, but also maybe some client moments or some client
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look for us. Uh, look, what we do is not for everybody. First of all, right? Not every trained accountant or business advisor has this in their DNA to do that. But what I've found is that for people that are passionate about this, it's like work's not tiring, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like the type of work that we do is actually really quite energizing, and to see the transformational change that clients go through, where a lot of them are sometimes stuck in that grind of, they're working too many hours, they've got a very low return for effort in terms of a profit number relative to the amount of work that's putting in. They're sacrificing family time. They can't go on a holiday without getting 24 phone calls every day from
Mm.
the team about what's going on. It's such a familiar journey and story for business owners to see them energized and to see their transition from that point to where they can go, well, do you know what? We can actually switch off. We can actually go on a holiday and not have to worry about logging on. And, profit levels have gone through the roof, or cash flows, improve significantly and things like that. That's the real kick for us. And it's a real different value proposition compared to your traditional transactional accounting stuff. So that for us is really exciting. And I mean, I guess, I've had clients come to me from various stages, from startups to quite mature businesses, and working with them, right across Australia. And I've got some clients in New Zealand as well that I work with, and where they follow the process, and where they engage, and I think the important thing that I say to business owners when they're going on that journey is that if you want to go from being an owner operator to an owner investor in your business, you actually have to invest. You have to invest in your team. You have to invest in infrastructure. You have to invest in systems and processes. You have to invest in advice and knowledge. You have to invest in marketing. And if you're prepared to invest, you actually get returns from your investment. And to see that transition where they go through and say, okay, well, this is now actually paying off, and we're really energized and re-energized about what we're doing. Look, we get a massive kick out of seeing that happen. Like I say, I've had some startups that I've worked with that have gone from zero to $30 million in annual revenue and $5 or $6 million worth of profit, simply because they've followed the process, and they've done stuff all along the way, and they're still engaged in monthly advisory and data sets and stuff like that, and they continue to learn and grow. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Nice. I love how it not only excites you and the team, this kind of purpose or mission, but obviously you can see that in spades with the client impact and how they grow.
Yeah,
And you touched on something really important, and it's something that was dear to my heart when I started out in advisory as well, and that's the personal side. So obviously setting goals. You talked about time, having the time to live their lives. And the other thing I loved, and I think, a good takeaway for our listeners was the terminology around investing in your own business, which often SMBs, as we know, don't think that way. So to calibrate them to be thinking that way is so important. Um,
yeah.
the obvious follow-up question for me is, how are you investing in your business? So how does your success lab consider the tool sets that empower what you do, the people you hire, the clients you attract? If you can maybe start with those three, there may be other elements you want to bring in, but how did you design your business?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, part of it's a journey of constant learning. So I love to read. I love to watch podcasts, or watch videos, YouTube podcasts, listen to all that sort of stuff. I'm part of an accountability forum group that catches up every month online and face to face 4 times a year, where we get deep into our business and how we operate and the goals and all those sort of things. So first of all, it has to start with me, and I think if you don't have a personal thirst for learning or improvement, then there's no way anybody else in your organisation or your business will have that. And I think a good buddy of mine who's a global speaker once said, well, you actually cap your business capacity at the level of the knowledge of the owner and the CEO. So if I'm not getting better, then the business definitely can't get better. So that's the first investment I make is, I'll make that investment in myself. I think one of my buddies said, he's actually in my forum. He said, if you don't invest in yourself, you're actually a bad judge of a good investment. Um, And I think
True.
that's so true. But then everything flows from that. Well, having those conversations or listening or learning actually then takes you down the paths of saying, okay, well, what tools can you apply in your business? What of these things are useful to clients? How can you adapt what you've learned here or heard there to add value to others? And that helps us then determine, well, what platforms can we use? How can we use that platforms to create leverage? Um, what value does that add to clients in terms of new knowledge or information? How does that enable them to collaborate with others and so on? So we sort of follow that process, and then the team naturally gravitate to that. If somebody doesn't have that same thirst in our organisation, really it comes out right at the interview process. We're clear, and we ask people what they've done or what they've learned or what they do outside of work. Are they readers? Do they listen to this or do they do that? I think the standard. I think if somebody says that they don't not engaged in any of that sort of stuff, it's already a red flag for us in our recruiting to go, well, this isn't really the type of person that's going to fit with us.
Do you apply the same mindset, Andrew, to clients you attract or want
Yeah,
to work with?
yeah, 100%. So that's filtered out really, really early. So that's one of our core criteria is that they need to be at a certain level because what we do comes with a
Mm.
required investment in dollars. So they need to have capacity to do that, but they need to have a willingness to grow and get better, invest in the people in their team, and establish leadership groups and learn and go and do those things themselves. And we can identify that pretty early through our I'll call it our sales process, which is what it is, to see whether those people fit or whether they don't fit.
That was my next question really was around how do you as I say in my transform book, hunt where the antelope roam. So where do you target that kind of business? And when you get them into your sales process, and we all know accounting firms sometimes struggle with even the concept of a sales process. Do what kind of approach do you use? Is there a checklist? Is it gut feel? Do they have to get sign off from you? How do you get the best clients for your success lab to thrive?
Yeah, look, we've got various channels that we use to generate leads and create a sales pipeline, if you like. And as soon as somebody is engaged to have that, I'll call it first sales meeting, it might only be a 15 to 20-minute call, but we've got a pretty clear set of questions that we ask around, well, what are your core issues? What are the problems you're having? You know, what's some of your financial circumstances? What does that look like? What capacity have you got to do that? How urgent is this? And you can sort of size that up pretty quickly.
Mm.
And one of the key questions that we ask is, well, is this a now issue or is it a later issue? So it actually gauges somebody's sense of urgency to get stuff done. So it identifies that pain point. And I think a lot of us, or a lot of the stuff that we will provide in terms of content, um, gives people an awareness or an understanding that we understand their problems. We understand that even though their business is unique to them, the challenges that they face, whether it be with staff or cash flow or profitability or whatever it might be, everyone's got the same issues. Every business at some point in time, unless they're a freak of nature, has gone through a fortnight where they've gone, well, I'm just not sure how I'm going to make payroll this month. What am I going to do? How am I going to juggle this? And it's about understanding that they're not alone in that journey and that there's a way to fix all that.
So there's obviously some kind of value alignment there as well. And to what extent are you, I suppose, looking for the advisory element to trump the compliance element, or is it more complex than that?
But it's probably um, the advisory stuff is more valuable. It's more valuable to the client.
So
And
you
the thing
lead
is,
with that in
I,
your.
Look, I think so because the compliance is complementary, and we'll take on advisory clients that have really competent accountants that do their financial statements and tax returns and BASs and work collaboratively with them. So yeah, I think that's something that's a little bit unique in an advisory firm is that we don't have to take the
Yeah.
compliance stuff. So that for us is more a commodity framework, if you like. You
Mm.
know, a lot of that comes back to pricing and understandably from a cost perspective, businesses need to keep that transactional cost as low as they possibly can to lower their fixed cost of doing business. And and if somebody's just looking for cheap tax returns, then they're not generally the type of client that's going to want to necessarily also invest in what we do. So the advisory stuff is our lead. Now, we're generally, what I would say is probably 75% of the clients that we do advisory work with become tax and accounting clients
Mm.
as well,
Just kind of
because you,
via osmosis over time.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
via osmosis, and that creates that level of trust, like that you know their business and you know their numbers and things like that. So,
Yeah, it's really interesting. Actually, my own practice was very much advisory led, and we picked up the compliance kind of if we had to. But I
mm,
think it is quite rare that, and that's something I suppose for our listeners too, that you don't actually need to be all things to all people. Lead with what
no,
you're strong in, and if compliance comes, it comes. But if it doesn't, it's actually okay to work with other accountants. It doesn't need to be confrontational. It can be
yeah,
collaborative. One
yeah,
of the other things I picked up on, Andrew, that you mentioned earlier that I'm a huge fan of, and we know the Rob Nixons and there's other kind of people and groups out there, but having that kind of accountability framework where you're talking to other peers and perhaps other coaches and things as well, um, is something I think a lot of accounting firms don't do. They're very inward looking. Can you maybe
mm,
just unpick that slightly and talk to the value of, and I presume it's a Chatham House rules kind of scenario,
yeah.
but where you're actually having, I suppose, on the face of it, almost competitors sitting down with you in a peer setting to hold each other to account.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of our, the boardroom stuff that I do, and also that we're getting, we're really rolling out more aggressively now for clients as well. Is being in business can be a lonely journey, right? Like you quite often there by yourself, and most of the businesses that we work with, what I would say is they're SME family businesses, and so generally it'll be husband and wife. They might be working in there together, or it might be one spouse with a team, and with different responsibilities. And even in that dynamic, not everyone knows what it's like to walk in the other person's shoes. So it can be a really lonely place to be. And so the great thing about what I would call shared accountability and learning around that is that you've got a platform to actually work through the areas that you're stuck and and explore what that looks like. And there's organisations out there like Entrepreneurs Organisation EO or YPO for younger bigger
Hmm.
businesses, or Vistage Tech, that are there, but they don't have those type of organisations do not have the accountability that goes that a lot of business owners need, and there just isn't necessarily always the depth of sharing and depth of getting into the root cause or real issues that exist in a business to solve problems.
Yeah,
So
I think you've hit on a couple of powerful things there, Andrew. I think one is, don't be afraid to have accountability that's external to your own organization. And you alluded to it, but just to confirm, so you also help set up advisory boards
yeah.
for clients?
Yeah, so that's where we're going now. We do advisory board stuff, but like in the new year, one of the things, Richard, that we've identified for our own business is that one of the things that we've lacked is for smaller businesses that don't necessarily have a bigger leadership team and a shared internal resource. They don't have necessarily have or have had the financial capacity or the people leverage to actually get that level of accountability. So we're actually taking and actually getting to market now the actual, I'll call it formal boardroom of what that looks like for clients outside of their own
Mm.
little circle. So yeah, we're pretty excited that that'll kick off in March. And it's that framework of having other people in a room that you can run past strategies of in a safe environment to get feedback. Is this going to work or is it not? Where are my blind spots? How do I get unstuck from the problem that I'm stuck in?
Yeah,
And that's
I
really
think
powerful.
I think it's a really exciting service offering actually, and I think just reinforcing too for everyone. Not only is running an SMB often a lonely experience, as you say, it's often husband and wife, but actually running an accounting practice can be a lonely business.
Yeah,
So I applaud the fact that you're not only hiring the right people to have that internal kind of zeitgeist, but you're reaching outside to learn unpick problems together, but also just it's the whole mental health, feeling supported angle as well, which I think is so important in this day and age. And we all know, having been in the accounting industry 30 plus years, as we both, as we mentioned, that it is an issue in our industry. A lot of smaller firms in particular, the partners or the principals are really struggling with time and mental health and loneliness.
yeah. I think it's a really good point, mate. And look, there's been a massive transition. I know, it's something that we can all look back on and reflect on. And I've done a lot of this of our own journey through COVID and
Mm,
lockdowns and being stuck at home and things like that. And now a lot of times, when you're in that type of environment and you've quite often for traditional accountants, you quite often only hear from your clients when there's a key issue, when there's a problem, and it's accountants are still the trusted advisor to business. More so than the financial planner or a lawyer. But it's emotionally exhausting at times when all you get is negativity.
mm.
You've got this problem or that problem, and that negativity can soak into you, and it can get really exhausting, and you have to be really strong and really have a good platform to be able to deal with that. And I know on my own journey through COVID, I didn't deal with that at all well. I really struggled with my own mental well-being and stuff like that through that period, and that's why my forum group has been really important to me to have that outlet to workshop through those issues.
Yeah, I think that's great, and obviously giving that outlet for clients too, just to
Mm,
have some other eyeballs and empathy, I think, on the journey because
yeah,
the SMBs are the engine room of our economies, but boy, we're doing it tough at the moment. Um, it's a new year,
yeah,
2026. It's a period we were talking before we kind of came on here around, what's the goal setting practices. We're here at Spotlight, we're going to do a bit of a campaign around New Year, New You, encouraging accountants to do the Lord's work, aka advisory, um, and to look at their tool sets and all of that. Can you maybe talk us through what you do yourself and at your Success Lab for just to recalibrate and set the path forward for a year? Is it kind of a January
yeah.
at the beach thought process? How do you unpick
We,
this?
we normally do our strategic planning in detail in sort of May,
Okay,
and
leading into the new financial year.
new financial year is when we'll do our
Yep.
big session. We did a bit of a refresh back in December
Okay.
with some stuff around what that looked like. I've got my annual forum advance at the end of this month for a week, and so I'm currently in the throes of. I think I've got 6 or 7 presentations that I need to deliver
Right.
in that week, and that's about key areas where I'm stuck. big business goals. We need to present on, what we've achieved in the last 12 months in terms of ticking off, financial or personal objectives, what we've ticked off our
Hmm.
bucket lists, which is important. It's got to be fun
Nice.
as well. And so I'm in the throes over this break period of doing a lot of prep for that. And the big thing for me, like I said, that we're launching is that we've got our first, I guess, to explain a little bit of our client journey when people come on as an advisory client, is they'll always start with a strategy session. And that
Hmm.
strategy session, depending on the business, will be an $8,000 to $15,000 1 or 2 day detailed strategic plan development where we dive deep into that. And
Nice.
sometimes that's a bit of a big leap for businesses to go down that path. And yeah, I guess as a lead to the advisory work going on, we're going to do that as a group session for the first time in March. So we're going to put 16 businesses online in a room over 8 hours, spread over a couple of days, and we're going to run our strategic planning session online and do things in a different way to give it make it more accessible to more businesses. So I'm in the throes of doing some heavy lifting and getting that sorted out for the early March.
Love it. It's a key service offering, and I think it's one that accounting firms are a little bit scared to approach and maybe don't always have the skill sets to necessarily deploy on. Um, just talking service offerings, and you've touched on some of them, during this chat, but what are the advisory service offerings that have delivered either the biggest bang for buck for you commercially or qualitatively delivered the most kind of impact for you and the customer, or that you've enjoyed the most? What if you could just do three or four headline service
Yeah,
lines?
look, I think for us um, the initial strategic planning for the clients and for us is incredibly powerful. And I guess if the business model or the advisory model that I've developed has basically got three components to it. It's got a core component, which is about understanding your business model, getting clear on your goals, your values, your purpose, and developing that strategic plan, getting your profitability right and your cash flow right. From there, it's then about building connection, building out teams, data, infrastructure, and then
Mm,
you can actually capitalize on that through marketing, sales, or acquisition. So there's a journey through to a growth stage, and the establishment of that core focus or that original strategic plan is really energizing for us, but more importantly, energizing and gives people, makes them fall back in love with their business again because they understand that there's a roadmap to somewhere better or out of the shit that they're in. Um, and but from that, the advisory work that comes out of that in terms of their one-to-one accountability sessions, whether they be monthly or quarterly, the preparing the advisory board packs, the financial modelling, which we use Spotlight for,
mm,
to do all our forecasting, and that is also the platform we use to do our monthly, I'll call it board packs and reporting around all that. So that sort of stuff is then really valuable, and making sure that those data sets link and provide the right information in real time is incredibly valuable to the clients. I've had some people that have come and said their old accountants has given them stuff on spreadsheets, but it doesn't actually tell a story. It doesn't actually give you any insights on what's going on, and the insights that they get out of understanding understanding what drives the numbers is really empowering for businesses. Quite often they get a revenue number at the end of the month, but they forget that that's X number of leads converted to this number of sales at this price point, this recur, like they that
yeah.
connection they don't understand until quite often don't understand until it's spelled out. And so that's really powerful to do that. And then out of that advisory stuff comes a whole lot of projects, whether it's building out business models, whether it's helping some sort of sales training or building out workforce plans and things like that. There's a whole lot of other products or services that come out of that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the most profitable work that we do quite often ends up being the tax and accounting work because a lot of that stuff happens along the way, and that generally because we leverage our offshore team to be able to
Mm.
do that. The profitability margins on doing that is generally very good.
Yeah, yeah, you've hit on a couple of really interesting points there, and I think having this strategy as the anchor for so much that follows is really important. But I love, and this is something where accounting firms can sometimes struggle, is actually just having those mentoring or accountability sessions. Um, it's regular touch points and executing on strategy, isn't it, that drives
Yeah,
actually new services, and they kind of sell themselves, and that's certainly what I found in practice. But I think accountants can get so caught up in a fear of marketing and selling that they forget that actually if you're just engaging with your clients, their needs and listening to those needs or asking the right questions leads to more and more work.
100%. And I think, look, in the simplest terms, sales comes back to transfer of value, right? And if you're having conversations with clients and they understand and appreciate that you can solve their problem, and a lot of the time you don't necessarily even have to solve it. You just need to know how it can be solved. And so it might be an introduction to somebody through another network or whatever it might be. It's just that transfer of trust and transfer of value, and it's not about selling services. It's about solving problems.
Nice, nice. I really like that. Now I'm told by my marketing team that everyone has a 45-minute attention span now, so
Yeah,
we better wrap before we get too much deeper. But certainly there's some conversations I think we can continue to have and hopefully share with the wider world during 2026 because we've just skimmed along the surface, but it's been really valuable, Andrew. One question I'd like to leave you with to share with the listeners is, what you've transitioned from compliance to advisory. You do both, and
yeah,
both of them, generate successful outcomes for your business and your clients. If you were listening to this maybe a few years ago and you're thinking about where next, what do I do? What are two or three things that you'd suggest that accountants, maybe in a traditional firm, partners wanting to spool up some advisory work, what should they be thinking about and whiteboarding now
yeah.
as the sun beats down
It's
beautifully in Australia and New Zealand at the moment?
it's interesting. And look, I will say this. I'm going to give him a plug. He's a great mate of mine. I know he's been polarizing in the industry. Is Rob Nixon? I was a really early journey with Rob as my coach.
Yeah,
Um,
you know
the
Rob
first
well.
thing I would do if I was in a uh, um, accounting firm as a partner or whatever, I'd go and get Rob's books and I'd read Rob's books. And
Yes, I
he
remember when they
he's
came out.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he he's released several books, and I would definitely start there just to create some thought bubbles around what alternatives actually exist out there. The second thing is, and I think it's a really um, powerful tool, and I've been lucky enough to start up various businesses from scratch. Is to take a blank piece of paper and say what would I want my ideal world to look like, and I think don't be afraid to blow stuff out. Don't be afraid to blow stuff up. If you would start with a blank canvas, what would it look like? What type of clients would you work with? What type of work would you do? How much money would you make?
Mm,
Are you niching in a specific industry? just start with, 4 or 5 questions of what that looks like, and redesign your ideal world. Because people, Richard, get so stuck in just the hamster wheel of just turning up and doing stuff every day. And
Yep.
I just go, why? Why would you do that?
I'm
Um,
I'm just rereading
oh,
Simon Sinek,
yeah,
but I love it. So start with inspiration.
yeah,
It can be kind of general stuff like the Simon Sinek or an industry expert like a Rob.
yeah,
Design your future. Love that. I whiteboard. I've got whiteboards all around the walls at Spotlight Reporting because I'm forever doing that. So, design the perfect firm for you. And of course, your third point, I can just say it for you, is, use the Spotlight Reporting app stack as your
yeah,
power tool.
100%. Yeah,
Sorry,
love it,
sponsored by, had to get that in. Um,
love it.
hey mate, look, really appreciate the time. We've been talking to you this year and last year because we're just really impressed with what we hear about what your Success Lab is doing in many ways. You're the kind of firm that Spotlight and our accountants and development people and all that here love dealing with because there's also ideas and information exchange and all of that happening. So really looking forward to working with you and the team in 2026 on the journey and just loving hearing about the work you're doing and the impact you're having. So have a fantastic 2026, and
Thank you, mate.
I will get to Adelaide this year. Regrettably, I've only been through the airport. I haven't been out to the Barossa or anything like that, or even to Adelaide Cricket Ground. I need to get there for some cricket.
Well,
So
mate, you'll have to fix that. So
we will.
it's your calendar. You're in control of it.
Yeah, it's the ball has been pitched to me. I will head it out of the park. But yeah, huge thanks for your time and for the insight you've shared, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
No, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andrew. Take care.